Hello, I'm Philip Duncan with your Climate Watch seasonal outlook for the rest of May and also going into winter, June and July, included as well in this update. So we're kicking off with the animated maps. This is showing air pressure, which is a very important place to start when you're doing long range forecasting. So as you can see in the yellow and white colouring, most of this map is high pressure coming in towards the New Zealand area. There's a very weak low to our northeast, a very weak low to our southwest, but most of the stormy lows are down here circling around Antarctica. There's a huge belt of high pressure coming in from Aussie right now, and that is going to keep us fairly dry in New Zealand for the next few weeks, as you're going to see. Now we kick off by going backwards. We're going to take a look at the last 7 days of rainfall, and what it shows you is how lumpy and patchy the relief has been, especially in our drought zones to the north. The areas in pink, which are mostly around the hills and the ranges, they've had around 90 to 100 millimetres, but you don't have to go very far. For example, the Hauraki Plains, which has got the yellow colouring, you might have only had 10, 11, 12, 13 millimetres of rain in that area. Similar around parts of Bay of Plenty in yellow, and the yellow and green areas in Hawke's Bay and down around Otago and Canterbury, showing that it's been mainly dry in your area, just a few millimetres coming in for you, maybe up to 10 if you're lucky. So it's been pretty dry, but there has been some relief, mostly coming in from the western side. Let's take a look now at the current soil moisture levels. So in a nutshell, most of New Zealand is leaning drier than average. We're in that below 50% of normal. The only area that's starting to come into about normal is down here around coastal Southland, but most places are leaning drier than average, especially in the east, where you can see it gets redder on that scale around places like Canterbury, North Canterbury, Marlborough, Hawke's Bay and inland parts of Waikato, although they have had around inland Waikato some decent downpours. Right, so we're going to kick off, as we did last time, by highlighting where the highs and lows are, because that's really the most important part of long range forecasting. You might see a low 2 weeks from now and think that's going to bring you rain, but if it's surrounded by highs, the highs are likely to dominate. So I've marked where the high pressure is with red, low pressure in the blue boxes. Look at this belt of high pressure from Aussie. That's going to take at least a week and a half to 2 weeks to track across the New Zealand area. Now it's slightly north, but I think what you're going to find is if this other big high that's just to our southeast, these highs come along Australia and they curve down. That's what they've been doing. The lows are doing the same thing. Remember, the world's not flat. Some of you might disagree, but most of you agree that the world is curved and circular. So the weather does the same thing. It's going around Antarctica. So sometimes it looks like it goes in a straight line from west to east. Yes, a lot of the highs do that, but lately they're starting to tilt a little bit further to the southeast as they come on through. So as we go through the next couple of weeks, certainly a lot of high pressure. This is the next 7 days ahead. Look at the high over Australia, the departure from normal with rain, and they are looking at 5% normal rainfall of normal rainfall for this time of the year. That's all that red colouring. Now out around New Zealand, touches of it. Let's get a closer look at New Zealand. You can see here a lot of red and pink, which is in that leaning drier than average. White is normal rainfall. So there's a little bit of normal rainfall out there, but not very much in this blue, which is mainly or completely out at sea, other than the west coast. So it does look over the next 7 days ahead quite dry. Now this is the rainfall map going a little bit further out, about 8 or 9 days out. The accumulation taking you to the 20th of May. 2 key areas to start with. In the South Island, we'll start with the dry side. Look at that, 1 millimetre or less potentially in this dry part of Canterbury between now and May 20th. So basically no rain. Similar story through central parts of New Zealand, of the North Island, mainly dry. You'll have easterly winds dominating. That's why you see more rainfall along that eastern coastline than we've been seeing lately. And the west coast, a fair bit of rain coming in for you, maybe up to 100 millimetres over the next 8-9 days. So that leaves us at May 20th. So what are the air pressure, what's the air pressure looking like at that point? And as you can see in red boxes again, Aussie is still being dominated by a lot of high pressure. This big belt here, that's that huge area of high pressure we just saw over Australia. By the 20th of May, it's crossing over New Zealand. Like I said, it's starting to drop like that as it does so. The North Island, you've got east to northeast winds coming through and more showers in that area. There's a low in here which is looking a little deeper, but it's surrounded by two big highs, so that one will be a bit of a struggle. So with this in mind, let's take a look at the next rainfall accumulation map. This is 15 days worth, and you'll notice there's not a huge amount of change in the South Island. Still got heavy rain on the west coast, 100 millimetres plus, but the eastern side, you're still down in the only a couple of millimetres, if that, and that's mostly just a few spits and spillover. The North Island potentially seeing a little more wet weather thanks to those nearby offshore lows and the easterly winds that are blowing through, encouraging some slightly higher accumulations, getting into the gold and orange colours. That's around 30 millimetres, 40 millimetres coming into those areas, but still fairly dry, especially southern Hawke's Bay, which is only expected to have 10 or 15 millimetres between now and the 26th of May. So the 26th, 27th of May, this is how the air pressure maps look. We don't have rainfall accumulation maps beyond 15 days because, to be honest with you, they're a bit pointless. They're not very accurate. But you can start to see where the air pressure systems are and then extrapolate from that where we're going as we head into June. So with this big block of high on the 27th of May, you can pretty much see high pressure is dominating New Zealand for the rest of this month. As it moves in, there'll be a southerly, so it's not solidly high pressure. There will be some wet days in there briefly, and a bit of a colder change maybe around then. But more importantly, it's this big block of high pressure that's rolling on in, but we've also got some new areas of low pressure as we get closer to the official start of winter in June. So we're keeping our fingers and toes crossed that we might get a little bit more wet weather coming our way. But I think it's fairly safe to say that most places are going to get drier, not wetter, other than the west coast, for the rest of this month. Let's take a look at temperatures for the rest of May. And by the way, slight apologies that we're running a little late this month. Obviously, that's due to a number of reasons, but mostly due to the COVID-19 situation, which has just limited a little bit of our resources. Hopefully, we're getting back on track, though, and we're making up for it by including June and July in our outlook. So this is the IBM data. Just to give you a very simple way of looking at these maps, start in the middle. That's normal. White is the normal colour for these maps. So if you're in that area or sort of plus or minus it on either side, things are looking pretty good. So as we can see, the temperatures for the rest of this month, 2.5, 3 weeks to go still, you can see we're leaning a little bit above where we would be for average, probably leaning maybe around about less than half a degree warmer than average in most places. Some of you might get up to half a degree. Looks like the South Island might be leaning a little bit warmer than the western side of the North Island. So that's May. This is May, June and July from IBM, showing a very similar story. We are either average to slightly warmer than average. Does that mean no southerlies? No, we could easily have major snowstorms despite this. Remember, this is several weeks. This is 12 weeks worth of data put into one map. You might have a week of major winter snow to sea level amongst all of this, but the suggestion is that we are leaning slightly warmer than average. Now here's the precipitation. Once again, we'll start with May, then we'll do the next 3 months. So for the rest of this month, not a great surprise really. We're seeing a continuation of the drier than average pattern along the eastern side of the country. That includes Coromandel being drier than average. It's also about average around these very eastern areas where it leans more white, very hard to see, but just right on the coastline there. That means those easterly showers are going to be helpful. But the western side, you might be looking at maybe a chance of some wet weather coming through. This is how it's looking at the moment, is suggesting that western areas and the rest of the South Island just a little bit wetter than average. To be honest with you, this looks a little more dramatic than it really is. I think most places will be seeing some normal sort of rainfall coming in. And remember, this also includes, perhaps more importantly, what's already fallen this month. And so most of the rain's already fallen. Now we're going to the dry side of May. Let's try and work out the next few months ahead. Very similar looking setup, which makes me think that as we go into the winter months, we're going to get more rainmakers coming out of the Tasman, but still drier than average for these eastern areas. Now look, we have to be honest with you about how accurate long-range forecasting is. especially in New Zealand, 2 mountainous islands in the roaring 40s. Our weather is chaotic for 5 days, let alone going out 3 months. But IBM says that they're up to about 65% accurate. You might laugh at that, but to be honest with you, there's no one else more accurate than IBM at long-range forecasting. I note that Met Service is forecasting for May a stormy May with lots of cold southerlies. Well, that's not happening. So I don't quite know where Met Service are getting it from. We don't track NIWA at all because we don't find them very helpful. So this long-range stuff from IBM is about as good as it gets for our part of the world. So take it with a grain of salt or help it factor into your decision making. But what we are generally seeing as we go into the start of winter looks like normal rainfall for many western areas, maybe even getting a little wetter than it has been, but eastern areas remaining mostly dry. So there we go. That is our climate update for the rest of the month of May and going into June and July. It is not perfect science. It's not an exact science just yet, but the computer modelings and the IBM supercomputer Watson are doing their best to really crunch these numbers down, and they use all sorts of models out there and then give you those sort of maps to simplify it. But those long-range maps don't really show the microclimate, so it's just a good snapshot as to what to expect in our part of the world. And I think it does suggest more westerlies coming our way and perhaps more northerly flows as well. But that does not, I repeat, does not rule out the chance of some very cold blasts that could still come our way. That is all from me. We'll see you again around the start of June for our next update.